Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another fabulous, magical episode of Breakthroughs with Bre, where we are having breakthroughs about our personal and spiritual development journeys so we can live our most abundant and authentic and blissful lives. I'm your host, Bre, known as Healing with Bre on Instagram and social media. And I am an Akashic channeler, energy healer, astrologer, and tarot reader who uses all of those modalities to do my favorite thing, which is healing and soul alignment coaching, where I teach people how to shift their consciousness, learn from their fears and patterns so that they can create the lives of abundance and ease and bliss that they want. And those are in my soul alignment and healing coaching sessions and programs. Today on this episode, we get to talk about a topic that is near and dear to my heart. If you've ever done a session with me, it comes up in my channeling sessions. It's something that we actively work with in any of my coaching sessions, and that is inner child healing. This has kind of become more of a buzzword, big topic in the personal development and spiritual space, but I feel like it has some negative connotations to it, or maybe some assumptions that people make about it that makes it feel a little bit big and scary. And I'm so excited for you to hear this conversation that I have with my guest today about what it is and what it isn't from her perspective, and how it really is something that everybody could benefit from. So I'm really excited for you to hear this episode. Just as a reminder before we get started, please subscribe and rate the podcast on whatever app you're listening. You can literally rate it the stars that you want without even leaving a review. It's so easy. So if you could take literally 2 seconds to do that, I can't even tell you how much I would appreciate that. Also, please follow me and the podcast on Instagram if you haven't already. There's a lot of really cool stuff that goes on there. So it's at Healing with Bre on Instagram and at Breakthroughs with Bre on Instagram as well. And there are links to get directly to those profiles in the show notes. I'm making it so easy for you. And finally, if you are wanting a little bit of support with inner child healing work, maybe especially after listening to this episode, that is one of the foundations of my long-term coaching programs. It is something that we can start to talk about and start to address in a single coaching session if you just want like a little bit of tools to get started on your own. But if you want some support to do some really deep transformation and healing work, to get to the state that me and my guests talk about today, the 3 and 6 month programs are really going to be what are going to be most helpful for you in doing that. And you can find all of the information about that on my website, healingwithbre.net. I do have some spots open in that. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that that was available to you. Now, I hope that you enjoyed this episode, and don't forget to DM me or email me or leave comments about your thoughts and what you really enjoyed, because I really love hearing from you. All right, let's get into the episode. All right, everybody. I am so excited to welcome this guest today. We were sort of like synchronistically connected with mutual people that we know. And I'm so happy we were, because her work aligns totally with all of the things we love to talk about on this podcast. Today, we have an inner child expert and creator of the TCS Method, Anat Peri. Hi, Nat. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast with me today.
Thanks for having me, Bre.
Well, I would love for us to start off getting to know you a little bit. I sent you some of the things that I love to use to get to know some of my podcast guests, starting off with maybe sharing your pronouns, if you want to share where you're located in the world, and then whether you want to start with like your astrology big three or human design. Take it wherever you want it to
Ooh,
go.
okay, cool. Oh, forgot the first question already. Oh, my
Pronouns
pronoun.
and or location if you want to share.
So, she, her. I am in sunny San Diego, and wherever you are in the world, I know it's probably colder, so I'm sending you some sunshine and warmth. Human design, I am a 2-4 generator, emotional authority, and I'm pretty defined everywhere except for my throat and my G center. So, yeah, I run a lot of energy, a
Oh, I
lot of
love
intensity.
that. Yeah, I'm a 4/6, so I share that one with you. Also
Ooh.
emotional authority. So love to see it. And then for your astrology, do you know your big three, your sun, moon, and your rising?
Yeah. Oh yeah, girl, I love all this stuff. I could jam on like astrology, numerology, yeah, human design.
My
That's
kind of
that's what I
people.
love. Yeah, so I could geek out on it all day long. I am Libra sun, Scorpio moon, and Leo rising. And I have four planets in Scorpio. And
Okay.
I'm basically all bunched up in quadrant one if you're looking at the birth chart.
Oh,
So,
interesting. Well, the Scorpio makes sense doing the inner child work for sure, going underneath the dark
oh
underbelly.
yeah.
So I love to see it. Okay,
Yeah.
some of our other fun, like personality test, personal
Mhm.
development stuff. Do you know your numerology, like life path number?
So I am a 58, which is a four. So 58 in like the tarot, like the numerology that's based on the tarot. So it's the Four of Swords, which is all
Mm,
about peace of mind. So I'm
that
here to bring
Libra.
peace of mind
Hmm.
to myself and others, which is very fitting as well. Because I'm
Wow.
all about like, yeah, bring people out of that monkey mind noise and into the body. So
I
yeah.
love that. And the four too, like creating really good foundations and like
Hmm.
really like anchoring into all of that too. I love that. Do you know what your personal year number is this year?
Um,
Just curious.
yeah, I'm in the, well, I mean, again, the 39, which in the tarot is the Knight of Cups. And it's really a year of like soul searching and more ease and vacations, which sounds
Love.
lovely. Yeah. So then I go into 40 is a life change year. So I go into
Mm,
a major life change year, which makes
love.
sense because my husband and I want to start a family. So that would
Oh,
make sense that yeah, yeah, by next birthday year, there'll be a major change.
I love that. Yeah, I'm in a 9 personal year.
Yeah.
Like the numerology, I'm a life path 5. And
Hmm.
but I'm in a 9 right now. And I also, me and my husband would also like to start a family sometime soon. And I'm wondering if maybe in this 9 year is the year that we get pregnant and it's sort of like the end of the pre-child era, like I just feel like there would be a lot of kind of cool synchronicity in that. So I share some of
Yeah.
that with you. The last most important question of these is, do you know what your Hogwarts house would be? Do you have a guess of what it would be if you are a Harry Potter fan?
Mm, no. I've watched some of them, but I'm a little bit older than I think
And
the
the Harry Potter generation.
Harry Potter fan.
So thank you for sharing those things with us. My guests love to hear that about all of those things from the guests, helps us get a little gauge, I get a little connected with all the things that I'm sure that they have in common with you.
Hmm.
And then the other thing that I really like to have my guests share is just a little bit about your story coming into the work that you do. I mean, I'm sure inner child work, I could make my own assumptions about, the kind of things that would bring you to focus on something like that. But I would love to hear from you, what really led you into this and part of why it felt so compelling or important to you.
Yeah, so I've been in the self-development space. Last week was 19 years for me since my first experience of transformational work. And prior to that, I wanted to major in psychology. I didn't want the 8 years of school. I'm still glad I didn't do that. Didn't go the traditional route, but it found me nonetheless. My friends were always coming to me in our teenage years in high school, asking me for my wisdom, my advice. And remember, my life path is here to bring peace of mind. And God knows what I said to them back then. But whatever it was, it created that sense of peace. So I always loved supporting in that way. I always loved understanding the world of psychology. And again, you look at my astrology, and I'm in that first quadrant, and all those houses are about that. So I'm aligned. It makes sense. I was supposed to be doing this, but I originally went the route of business and finance because I didn't want 8 years of school, of traditional school, just not the way that I learned. I learned a lot more experiential. And when I experienced my first program, it was really with my mom because we struggled in our relationship a lot. And I'm like, great, you'll see, I'm right and you're wrong. very much, in that rebellious, you know, teenage attitude, even though I was in my early 20s. And I fell in love with it right away. I fell in love with witnessing people have these breakthroughs and see possibility in their life and heal from things and forgive and all of that. And I knew that it had to start with me, like as much as I loved it and wanted to be like, oh, I just want to coach everyone. I was like, let me let me get my life to work. And for the next like 8 years or so, I spent around this program, this education, and it developed me a lot as a leader, and like as a coach, because I did volunteer with them and all that. But my life was still shit, to just sum it up. And I had no self-love. I was still lacking confidence, hopping for many careers, in like codependent relationships. And it wasn't as obvious as it is as I say it now. You always think like, oh, or not always think. I think I was in denial because I knew a lot, but the proof was not in the pudding.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something people need to pay attention to, especially if you love self-learning, self-developing,
Mm-hmm.
is, are you just consuming information and loving all the knowledge, but the implementation or the lasting transformation is not actually out there in the world. Like life doesn't look any different, and you're in denial of that.
Yeah.
And that was me. I was in a 5-year relationship living in New York City, had a ton of anxiety, and at the same time didn't like to be by myself, but also didn't like the craziness and chaos and energy of New York anymore. And lost in my careers. And I hit my rock bottom. I needed to. I was eating like a half a pint of ice cream every night, and I don't even have that much of a sweet tooth. I was just like that unhappy, like that depressed, and just looking for pleasure somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And um, would have never left that relationship, would have just kept trying to make this dead end thing work. And I found a note. He had just gone to a event in California, came back, and I found this note from this girl, and I just knew that he met someone.
Mm-hmm.
And it gave me so much permission to say, okay, you can finally let go. And 3 weeks later, I was on a plane to California, which was where I'd wanted to live for like 10 years, with $2,000 to my name, no job, no car, no home, no plan, and one girlfriend in San Diego. I just burned it all to the ground. But it was, on one hand, easy to do that because I didn't want any of it anymore. So it's kind of like, well, you know, you can't fall off the floor.
Mm-hmm.
So it's only up from here. So it's like, I don't want to live in New York. I don't want this relationship anymore. I don't want this job anymore. I was like, the one thing I know that would light me up is like living in San Diego. So peace out. Now my parents weren't happy about that, but worked for me. And it humbled me a lot too, because there's an energy when, in New York of if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. So we're a little bit cocky and very forceful, very much in our masculine is how we're, I think, as a society there, there's a culture there, trained.
Mm-hmm.
And then you add on top of that all this self-development knowledge that I had. I really thought I fucking knew it all. And so this experience humbled me. And this was 11 and a half years ago. Okay. So not that long ago. And I remember saying, like, okay, God, like, clearly I don't know what is best for me because I have nothing to show for it.
Mm-hmm.
So take the wheel, take over. I surrender. And I, started to see where all the self-development work I'd done until that point just brought me to awareness. I was only scratching the surface of things, but I still didn't know how to love myself.
Mm-hmm.
I had no self-love, no confidence, no belief in myself, no ability to spend time with myself, needed to be around people all the time. And so California, I was like, I'm ready to experience something new. And I was introduced to the world of yoga and meditation and plant medicine, and which eventually all led me to my mentor, who had been facilitating body mind psychology work for over 40 years. He passed away. He's no longer with us, but lucky for me, I got to work with him. And it was my first experience of real transformation.
Mm.
And real transformation, I realized in that moment, was not a walk in the park on a beautiful sunny day. It's a walk through a burning forest and there's some dragons to slay. Meaning, up until that point, a lot of the self-development experiences I had were just like aha moment, light bulb moments, and light bulb moments feel good. But there wasn't really getting to the depth and the root of the muck that's there, the pain
Yeah.
that's there, the grief that's there, the sadness, the emotions, the fears, all of
Yep.
that. And so when I finally did embark on that, when I met my mentor, he said to me, "You're different." He goes, "You're here for finishing touches." I'm like, "Oh, yes, please." He's like, "You have a lot of awareness." I'm like, "Uh-huh. Yes. I'm ready for some of the right tools." Because it's like being aware of your garden, and then all you have is a weed whacker. So
Mm-hmm.
how can you transform that garden?
Mm-hmm.
So working with him, I experienced inner child work for the first time. I
Wow.
experienced what it is to learn to reparent myself, to give my little girl what she always wanted and needed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, now I feel free. Now I'm ready to go be with myself, go explore. So I quit my job 4 months later, bought a one-way ticket to Maui, and just wanted to play. I was 35 years old, and I was like, I've been hustling forever. I just want to be and play by myself. I don't even want to hang out with anyone. Like it was so new for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then a few months later, I felt ready to start my business. And my mentor said to me, he goes, "You have a gift with this. Let me mentor you a bit." So I did. And that was a little about almost 9 years ago. And then I was um, ready to just embark on whatever is going to come through me as my method. I didn't feel like I needed to stay with him forever and work with him forever. I was just like, okay, I got a few things. All right, I'm good. I think that's for me in human design, that's the two. The two is the hermit, but it's also the natural. And I pick things up really fast. And I felt like, okay, I have enough. I'm ready to get out there, let it be messy. And I wanted other people to have what I finally, after 10 years of being in self-development, what I got. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted others to experience that level of freedom. And I was like, now I have the right tools. Now I know what's been missing all along.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh.
so, yeah, when I started out, there's no website, no social media, because I didn't know anything about that whole world of things. I just knew how to get out there, talk to people, and do what I do. And I did over 6 figures my first year, all organically through word of mouth, through referrals, because it was that profound for people.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had clients say to me, "I want to learn to do what you do." And I was like, "What? I don't know. What am I doing here? I'm still figuring this thing out." And I kept hearing it for 3 more years. So then I set the intention, year 4. This is the year that I really map out what is my method, what is my process, so that I can duplicate myself, so I could train those that want to be trained. And now for the past 3.5 years, I've been certifying coaches and healers in my method. Never
Wow.
thought I'd be here. This wasn't my plan. I just wanted to heal myself. And then I was like, oh my God, I have the tools. Now I get to be a great coach. But I honestly am humbled every day that I'm here. And now I have certified coaches that are doing incredible work in the world, making bigger impact because that, and it all goes back to like, because I chose me, because I chose to take these leaps into the unknown
Mm-hmm.
and be in the discomfort.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I love so much about your story and what you shared is that, like, without the love the knowing was meaningless. You know,
Yeah.
like to just know something, to understand it in like your mental fields, it's a little cheap. It's not, it doesn't have that like depth of meaning. It doesn't have that fulfillment that I feel like our souls really orient towards without that deep love, really, in every piece of it. Right. Yeah, I think you had said in your story, I didn't have self-love, right? And that was one of
Mm-mm.
my biggest signals that like I was missing something, right? A lot of this felt good. I understood things, but like I knew I hadn't got to it because the feeling of actually being in love, in a love energy for myself, with myself, in my own life, that still felt evasive to me. I still didn't know how to capture it. I didn't know how to cultivate it. I didn't really know how to let that start to like permeate my life and let that change things in the way that it does naturally when we're really, really aligned to it. And that was the signal that there was still something to nose out a little bit, you know, and how it was this work, this inner child healing work. And really what I'm hearing too is that there was a lot of somatic work, right? There was a lot of feeling work. I really identify with people who maybe initially intellectualize things, right? They come in on that level because that's the level that they coped, you know? And so the way back into a little bit more balance and healing is like coming back into the body, coming back into the feelings and like learning to let both of those merge. But like, yeah, but that doing this work is like what finally led you to like not only have the power of the mind and of the knowing, but really the core, which was the love.
Yeah, yeah. And that is to me what inner child work is. I think a lot of people, we hear it. I'm not the only person that does inner child work, but I feel that my version of it is different.
Mm,
To me, the inner child is your access to all your desires. It is the access to you living heart-centered, right? Coming from love as opposed to ego-centered.
mhm,
And the ego isn't bad. Your ego is your amigo.
mhm,
Your ego is the ultimate protector when you don't know how to tend to yourself. If you think of your inner child, and this is really how I want people to think of their inner child, is your inner child is your emotion. Every emotion that you are experiencing, whether it's happy and horny and joyful, or it's, anxious, afraid, angry, sad, whatever it is, that is your inner child
mm,
experiencing that, expressing that. And so imagine that younger version, that child walking into your bedroom right now and being the part of you that says, I feel dot, 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 or I feel like dot, dot, dot.
mhm,
It's your job to tend to that child in the
mhm.
most loving way, which a lot of us didn't get as a role model of that.
Yeah.
We need to learn how to mother ourselves in that way. Maybe mom had no patience for us or very little, or she couldn't, or it was too much for her because she was already overwhelmed by all of her feelings and emotions. And
Mhm,
then that teaches you to be that way with yourself. So the
mhm,
ego comes in as the babysitter, right? The ultimate protector. When you don't know how to tend to yourself, your ego comes in. Except for your ego's job isn't to tend to that child, it's to protect it. And how it protects it is by putting the focus external.
mhm,
Let's look externally, let's reach out externally to feel better.
mhm,
So it's a band aid
mhm,
that doesn't replace you, but we need it. It's better than nothing.
mhm.
But you look at the world and the problems and the challenges in the world, it's because most people are ego driven, are still are their ego is still in it running the show,
Mhm,
protecting them, as opposed to I don't need protection. I am safe because I know how to cultivate safety. I know how to feel whatever comes up for me.
mhm,
And so now I can go out into the world and live heart open. I can be courageous. I could be bold. I could be vulnerable and know that if it isn't met, all that's going to do is bring up some sensation, some emotion. And if that emotion comes up, oh, I know how to ride the wave. I know
mhm,
how to ride those waves. So when people ask me, what do I do? I teach people how to ride the waves of their emotions so they could build their resiliency up to handle whatever life's going to give you. And that to me is true freedom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Financial freedom isn't freedom. There's plenty of wealthy people that are suicidal.
Mm-hmm.
True freedom
Mm-hmm.
is to know how to navigate whatever you're experiencing. So your inner child is your emotions, which means it's your energy, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why you hear the somatics in there because it's
Mm-hmm.
all, yeah, it's our energy.
Totally. Yeah, I like to say, it's sort of similarly that the sense of confidence that I think a lot of people really orient to about like being confident to experience and try other things and being in circumstances, to me, that feels like having confidence in your ability to create safety in any experience. Like I am fully safe any experience. So that can allow me to not operate from fear, which to me, I like that. I think that comes from a lot of ego stuff. We stay in like a survival, scarcity, what's going to keep us alive kind of place when we're operating from the mind and from the ego. And the alternative is letting the heart lead, the soul lead, right? Where we can be
Yeah,
more in that thrive and that abundant and that open and that trusting energy. But to your point, that's something that we have to learn how to do. We have to teach the body how that's safe. We have
yeah,
to teach the mind to get on board. We have to like learn how to kind of integrate that and how to shift from the ego running the show. Primary concern is survivability. Nervous system always in that state, right? Into a place where we can have more access to the soul.
yeah,
We can ride the waves. We feel confidence in our ability to create safety whenever we need to. We have confidence in our ability to follow things like joy, etc., and how that can change our lives. I want to ask you more questions more about this and your
yeah,
method when we come back from a quick break. Okay, so I want to come back to something that you mentioned that the way that you look at inner child healing is perhaps a little bit different than how some people talk about it. And I really want to have a conversation about this because I feel like it's a more popular term now.
mhm,
People mention it like inner child healing, it's thrown around. It's not like an unheard of concept, but I think what it actually means is not so specific. And it therefore has a lot of assumptions and misconceptions. And
yeah,
there's a lot of places where people are using the term in certain ways that maybe other people aren't. And I feel like that can actually lead to people feeling a little bit like, I don't know if I want to be doing that. So I would love for you to share your thoughts on that whole experience right now, or I guess maybe the
yeah,
prevalence of that, and how and why you feel like a little bit more. I know you already did about how you look at inner child healing in comparison to all of that.
yeah. So I think, and you could add to this from your own perspective of what you thought inner or what you think inner child healing is, but a lot of times, and it's part of it. Part of it is definitely like, yeah, learn to love yourself and be kind to yourself and look yourself in the mirror and say nice affirmations and blah blah blah. But I don't know what people think it is outside of that. What I'm
I feel
curious,
like I feel
what did
like
you know?
the reputation it had for me was that it was revisiting your darkest, scariest, like most traumatic things in your young life. And that it was like somehow confronting those and somehow being better for that, but not like a lot of information about like what that would actually look like, what the experience of that would be
Yeah.
like. And I feel like what our mind does when we assume things is we assume the worst. That's like an ego mind thing
Hmm.
protecting us, right? So when there's
Exactly.
ambiguity around that, like we tend to get a little sus about it. And it like the thought like if you're just starting your healing and personal development work and somebody tells you, okay, you got to go back to those darkest, scariest things now, ready, go. You're like, excuse me, what? Like, I don't want to do that. There's a reason I've never done that. I don't have the tools to do that. Like, no,
Yeah.
thank you. No, thank you. Can I somehow get what I want without ever having to do that? Right. I feel like that's kind of a lot of the maybe the like knee jerk reaction. And that was at least the reputation that inner child healing had to me. Of course, I think about it very differently now, but like when I first got into this work, that was very much the vibe. And I still pick that sense off of people. when they get told that they could visit something like inner child healing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so there is there is partly that,
Hmm.
and it's not something to ready, set, go, jump into. Uh, the process of my methodology is very much there's 5 stages to healing. And stage one is awareness. And awareness is not just like, oh, I'm aware of this thing that I want to change or fix in my life. It's awareness also of what are the ways that I protect myself from letting this go? What are the ways that I hide? What beliefs do I have around it? Um, how safe do I feel? And so and who did I learn this from?
Hmm.
Is this mom's energy or dad's energy? Because to me, a lot of the work of inner child is that it's not who you are, it's what you learned. And if you learned it, you can unlearn
Hmm.
it. And you learned it predominantly from mom and dad by the time you were 7 years old. And you
Yep.
either copied, rebelled, or created a way to survive. So if it was, a big T trauma or something that really shook you up, then you needed to act fast and just this survival strategy got formed. And so there is exploring and looking into all that. But then there's also really first regulating your nervous system, preparing yourself, strengthening that so that you feel safe to explore this. And exploring it doesn't mean you have to go into specific memory
Hmm.
and definitely not going to go and revisit like, um, traumatic experience.
Hmm.
There's a lot to unlearn from that is not related to that.
Hmm.
I've had many clients that are like, oh, I had a great childhood. Mom and dad were wonderful. Mom was always with me. But yet they don't know how to take care of themselves because mom was always busy taking care of everyone but herself. And so what they learned from that is to keep busy, put others first, don't have needs, because mom is the role model for the self. You learn everything about yourself from mom. How to treat yourself, see yourself, take care of yourself, love yourself. Either you copy, rebel, or survive. And so it's not always related to, you know, your, what did you call it? Your deepest, darkest
Yeah.
childhood experiences. There's plenty of people that didn't have that, but they had a lot of dysfunctional learning
Hmm.
when it came to limits and boundaries and connecting to themselves and being authentic and being vulnerable and being responsible and giving themselves what they need and want and having self-esteem. These are the areas of development that I work through with my clients.
Hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
so
And
much more than just the, you know, the traumatic experience of XYZ.
yeah. And I also, like you said earlier, I'm so interested in the psychology. I went to school actually. I was doing sort of like pre-vet, so it was like medicine sort of studies initially in school. And so I love understanding like the biology and the physiology and the psychology, like all of that is so interesting to me. And what I like to explain to people about this, and of course, please add, any and everything that you would, but like there's a function from the age of 0 to 7 that happens in our development, like physiologically, right?
Mhm.
Where we're this
Yeah.
sponge, our brain is
Yeah.
at a certain frequency, right? Like literally it's laying the foundations for how we
Hmm.
understand ourselves, how we understand the world, about what our needs and wants, about how we go about getting them met, like all of these fundamental concepts that we don't even think about now because they're
Yeah.
so filed away in the subconscious. All of those had to
Exactly.
be learned at some point, and they're
Yeah.
learned, and the imprint of that is made on our bodies from the age of 0 to 7, which is why I feel like this concept of childhood is so prominent because if we want to understand what the building blocks are right? Like what they're
Yeah,
made of. They all were made during that time. So I think that's so
exactly.
beautiful that you said, like, even if there isn't like some capital T trauma, like it's still so important to go back to that time and observe with our adult eyes, with our hopefully brains that are more cognitively and emotionally mature and have had the benefit of years of development past them, to look back at that and say, okay, what was happening? How did my little child brain interpret that at the time, whether that was true or not, and be able to understand that in a different light? Because until you can see the impact that that had on you, again, just objectively, like you just, it's hard to know what you're working with. So I like to
Yeah.
explain that, like, even from that perspective to people, the
Hmm.
role that that age and that period of development has, and how thoroughly it impacts us even as adults today, as a way to kind of
Well,
demonstrate
we get
its importance.
stunted. If you don't go back and revisit that, and I don't mean revisit like again, some of my clients don't even have memories of it. And I'm like, we don't need a memory. You can use your imagination. It's all
Mhm,
just to bring up what physiological experience was there. And the
mhm.
brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. So we could watch a movie and start crying,
Yeah.
even though we know it's made up. So same thing. So it's just like reconnecting to, well, do you remember a time? No. Can you imagine a time? Yeah, I can imagine a time when my mom was like that. Yeah. What was that like for you?
Mhm,
And what did you do in that moment? So you could start to feel into the the way that you shut down or the way that you acted or survived it that now has become your pattern.
mhm,
And instead, what did you need? If you knew you were safe, what did you need? What did you need from mom? I needed mom to tell me that, like, it's okay. It's okay that you didn't do that the way that I said. Did a good job. It's okay to make mistakes. I love you anyway.
mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of a client of mine who was very, very, very hard on himself, very judgmental, carrying a lot of shame. He felt like he fucked up
Mhm,
when he and his girlfriend broke up. And I'm like, whose energy is this? He's like, oh, yeah, right. This is my mom's energy. She was always very hard on me. I learned to be hard on myself and that I have to get it right. I have to get it perfect.
mhm,
Otherwise, I carry a lot of shame. So I've been spiraling in shame for days.
mm.
And as we
Yeah.
move through the stages of healing, he was able to shift out of that.
Mm.
That
I'm
was,
so happy that you mentioned that part about how sometimes it's not even about having the memories, because that's the camp I fall into. I don't have a lot of memories. I have like the flashbulb ones, like there's like a handful of ones I can remember that get a little bit more and more frequent as I get into sort of the high school. And college is probably like late high school and college is probably the first time that I could like think of a time and probably recall like accurately. And other than that, like really not a ton. And for anybody's listening who might identify with that experience, I have had profound healing experiences. I have had such deep and meaningful and cathartic shifts in relationship to what I would call my inner child and like early life experiences that didn't have anything to do with me like somehow unlocking my memory or something like that. Like I I
yeah,
I had access to all the information I needed in my body, you know?
yeah, your body keeps the score.
Oh,
Your body keeps the
100%. My
score.
body remembers,
Your body
like,
remembers. And that's
mhm,
why it's about tapping into, well, where do you feel that in your body? The like,
mhm,
for example, um, I can't seem to get it right.
mhm,
You know, I feel ashamed. Where do you feel that?
mhm,
And that may be a challenge initially for people to tap
mhm.
into where they feel it. And again, this is all part of stage one. It's
Yeah.
not something that is rushed.
Mhm.
We go as fast as the slowest part. And then
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I can feel it. It's in my gut. Does it have a size, a temperature, color, texture?
Mhm.
When we get curious about what we label as shame or as whatever emotion, when we get curious about it, the level of felt sensation, what's
Mhm.
happening then is that we're actually speaking the language of the nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
So we're speaking to the nervous system, and the nervous system can actually start to process it. Whereas when we're speaking in emotions, we label it as good or bad. And then if it's bad, our mind goes to fix it, fix it, fix it. This is
Mm-hmm.
wrong, this is bad.
Mm-hmm.
And, this leads me to stage two of the five stages of healing, which is acceptance. And this is the hardest stage for people to get past because acceptance means nothing to fix, nothing to change, learning to be with it as it is and how to ride the waves of
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. Get good at riding the wave, not trying to fix a wave. Imagine being in the ocean, being like, I don't like this wave. Let me fix it. Boom. You get plummeted, you get plummeted, you get plummeted, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we start to get curious, just get curious. There's nothing to fix or change. It's there. So
Mm-hmm.
you might as well go be with it, get curious about it
Yeah.
instead of needing to figure out how to make it go away or change it or fix it. Get
Mm-hmm.
curious
Yeah.
about
Oh,
its
and I
form.
love this. I want to hear more about your process, and I just want to interject this in for anybody
Yeah.
listening. I feel like a huge part of this kind of work is that we legitimately and objectively did not learn how to relate to these things. We did not learn how to process them. So when you start to come into this work, I really like taking the attitude of, okay, I just didn't know how to. There's nothing wrong with
Yeah.
me that I didn't. Like, of course I didn't. How am I supposed to know something I never learned? Like that's not a reasonable expectation of myself or anybody else. So now is an opportunity for me to learn a way that I could do this. Like it's just like an opportunity to try something new and see how it
Yeah.
fits and see how it works because obviously I don't have something that's working that great for me, or else I probably wouldn't be here looking into something, right? So, when you're
Yeah.
thinking about any type of healing, self development work, and especially this inner child work, I think processes like you're going to go on to describe a little bit for us are so helpful because, again, it's just now I get to learn a way that I never had that opportunity to before. I actually
Mm-hmm.
get to like get some tools,
Yes.
get to figure out what to do with all this stuff in here that I just didn't know how to do. So I think
Yeah.
having that mindset can just be so helpful. So moving
Yeah.
through this stage is yes, we start
Yeah.
the first step that we can do, curiosity. I love curiosity because it like puts down the judgment part of us,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's just
Yeah. Or the need to
openness.
get anywhere.
Hmm.
Just like, oh, let me just get curious, which is exactly what we needed when we were kids. We just needed our parents to get curious and
Mm,
about what we were feeling instead of like judging it or telling us we shouldn't be or
mm,
rushing to try and fix it.
mm,
So, yeah, like you said, we weren't equipped. So now you get to learn
mm,
how to be with it. And there's a lot of survival patterns that I teach in my work that you get to learn that you'll see come online as like other versions of the ego of protectors
mhm,
that are going to be like, oh, I don't know. It's so much easier to just keep doing what we were doing. And so, yeah, stage two, like I said, is a lot of times where people need the hand holding at first. It's that's why my business is called Training Camp for the Soul. It's just training camp. We're just
mhm,
training you. Then the real work begins.
mhm, mhm,
But in that training, you get to be, it's like training wheels on a bike.
mhm,
And when you're ready, you take them off. I have clients say to me, like, Anat, I've never had to do any other program after yours. They're just like, these are the tools, and the tools work. And now
mhm,
I know when I need it, I go to them.
mhm. I
But
love that.
back to stage two. So yeah, just learning to be with it. And they've done studies of this at Harvard that you can move through any emotion in 90 seconds.
Mhm,
It doesn't mean that you're going to move through grief in 90 seconds, but that emotions come in 90-second waves from when you fully ride it.
mhm. When
Like
you're not like, yeah,
get on the board and ride the wave. 90 seconds, you're at shore.
there you go.
You're home. You're back to yourself. It's the resistance to it that and I love the analogy of being in the ocean trying to surf some waves. It's your resistance to it or not knowing what to do or wanting it to be different that has you stay out there, continuing to get plummeted by it, but stuck out there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Um, yeah, so and like what that looks like is when you can fully get curious, no resistance, let it be and be with the sensation of it. And let's say the sensation of it is, oh, Brie, it's in my throat. I kind of feel nauseous. When my clients tell me that, I'm like, don't swallow. Marry the energy. So whatever the energy is, how much can you come into union with it? So much so that you're riding it, you're letting it move through you. So if they're like, oh, I'm nauseous, I'm like, cough it up, open. And the more they do that, they're allowing it. They're allowing that energy
mm-hmm,
to come through. If you're ever around a child, if you're a parent or, have any nieces and nephews, from if they're upset and you come around them and you're like, yeah, yeah, you're sad right now. I'm here. I love you. I'm not going anywhere. From the moment that you grant them so much permission and safety to express it, set your timer. It'll be 90 seconds or less. It'll be done.
mm,
It's the we're out in public. Stop doing that. That has them stuff it down. And then they end up having a bigger tantrum later because they've been
mm,
holding it for so long that it's accumulated to being 10 different emotions instead
mm-hmm,
of one.
mm-hmm.
And how we do that as adults to ourselves, if you're like, yeah, not that's nice, but mine lasts more than 90 seconds, I call BS. Well, that's because you're fueling the fire.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, if your child comes home and says, I'm sad, Timmy didn't want to play with me in the playground today, and you say to that child, come here, let me hold you, they'll move through it in 90 seconds. But if you say, well, that's because you're a loser, you're stupid, you're always going to be alone. You just added another 90 seconds for each one of those.
Yeah,
And that's what we do to ourselves.
totally. Yeah, I think that revelation, that emotion is just sensation and it just wants to move and it's going to start and stop, that it's not this like thing that's going to last forever that you're going to get lost in. I think that is a major revelation for a lot of people. Like, again, just something you didn't know. You learn to be afraid of all that kind of stuff. And yes, the like germinating and the holding on to and the resisting, and yet at the same time, like feeding into the beliefs that are really generating the feelings and the way that we're relating to it mentally also can just it can torture us, literally torture us and make it harder. So that makes total sense to me that that sort of like acceptance stage would be a little bit difficult. Once people start to feel like they can surrender a little bit to it, what are some
Mhm.
of like the next steps in that?
Yeah, so if you're doing this on your own, I'll back up and say, well, how do I get to stage one and stage two? And not there's a lot of noise happening in my head. And that's usually what it is like. And if you go to dinner at an Italian family's house, everyone's talking over each other and you only hear the loudest person. And it's the same thing for us. You're only going to hear the loudest person if you keep it internal. And most likely that's going to be either your ego
Mm-hmm.
or your inner critic,
Mm-hmm.
right? Those are the louder ones. You're not going to hear the inner child. And so, first and foremost, you want to imagine that you're calling your best friend. When you call your bestie, you can like no filter it, tell her anything, everything, let it be messy. You're going to do the same thing, but instead of your best friend, you're going to grab a piece of paper, you're going to grab your journal, and you're going to imagine that you're writing this to your best friend. It just like doesn't have to be full sentences, nothing. You're just dumping out whatever you hear, whatever the noise is. 1 second you may hear your ego, and then a second you may hear your inner critic, but you're not trying to identify them. You're just dumping it all out as you're hearing it. Then you go back and you circle everywhere that you wrote. I feel dot dot dot. I feel like I am dot dot dot. This is your inner child. This is the one at the table that needs tending to.
Mm,
And then you may also hear your heart, the I want, I wish, dot, dot, dot. And then you could make a note of that because you'll be able to go for that once you've tended the inner child. So now you have all these things that the inner child said. And you could ask yourself, whose energy is this? Where did I learn this? Mom's energy is dad's. What, is this what I saw, what I heard, or what I felt energetically? Is this how they felt about themselves, how they made me feel? And if it's both mom and dad, always start with mom because
Mm.
mom is the foundation, it's the self. Dad is others. And I'm not saying this is easy to do on your own, but if you want to try it out, this is how you bring it into practice. And then from there, it's like, what did, imagine reparenting, right? Giving that little one what she needed from mom. Imagine that little one walking into the room. Or, if mom was always hard on you, what did you need from her in that moment? I needed to say to her, hey, mom, you know, can you just hold me right now? Be present with me and love me. Tell me it's going to be okay. And very much whatever we needed from mom is what we get to give to ourselves now, right? It's the self, reparenting the self.
Mm-hmm.
And, stage 3 is getting to the root of it. So it's sometimes an exploration as to um, either where do I feel this in my body and naming the sensations of it, being at the root of it, or if there is a memory or an imagined time, maybe it's not an exact memory, but yeah, this is definitely mom. And I can imagine her being this way. I don't remember a particular exact time. It doesn't matter because your memory is probably not accurate anyway. And the whole point of it is just to connect to the experience that that little one had, to feel that stuck energy and to witness that stuck energy and to accept it and to allow it and to reparent it the way that you always needed.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's that you held it all in and you really wanted to just cry it out.
Mm-hmm.
Or, oh my God, it's been stuck in my gut. Now I'm burping it out. I have clients that will burp, 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 or yawn, 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 yawn,
Mm-hmm.
or feel like they need to scream or punch or cry or tear,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. You finally allow. That's the nervous system processing the energy. That's the nervous system digesting it, making room.
Mm-hmm. Energetically releasing it, especially because I do like energy work with people and like it's
Hmm.
literally in your fields. Like you have to let it like come up
Hmm.
and move out of the field, and the body has all these really brilliant ways that it does it. You just got to let the body do it, you know? And all of these ways that you're describing are like little energy healings, you know? So like let yourself do the cry. If you feel like you got to shake like a dog or something, you know, like these are all things that
Yeah.
help, that literally
Hmm.
help balance your energy fields and like your
Hmm.
body and heal your
Yeah.
body for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's the start of stage 4, which is reparenting and rewiring,
Mm,
right? We have reparenting by moving through that, like, yeah, move the emotion, be with it, love it. And then rewiring of, well, so now that that energy is out of the way, that's no longer there, there's space. It's like clearing a weed, pulling a weed out from your garden by the root. There
mhm.
is now space
Yeah.
there. What do you want to plant there? And so I love asking, and you can ask yourself this again, if it's a mother learning, if it's self related, what's possible now that wasn't before for myself with myself?
Mm,
Because it's self related,
mhm,
right? Whether it's
mhm,
like, oh, I, I get to be unapologetically me, or I make time for myself, I play, right? Everything is just self with self. And that's the rewiring, that's the new belief. And just like an actor that's learning a new script, you get to practice that belief.
mhm,
Tell my clients, I'm like, write it down every day, say it every day, record yourself saying all your new affirmations, listen to it
mhm,
so that, you know, in moments when shit hits the fan, that the default old script doesn't come into place, that there's a new one.
mhm,
So I have them keep track of what are the new things that you want to program into your subconscious mind.
mhm. Love
And
that.
if it's dad related, right? If it's others, if it's something outside of self, right? Forget dad. It's anything that is not the self is other, is the world. Then it's what's possible and available now out with others in the world that wasn't before,
Mm,
right? What's possible with others out in the world. So whether that's your career or your relationship, it's like, oh, it is safe to be seen, or
mm,
I get to be vulnerable.
mm-hmm,
Others do care, whatever it is.
mm-hmm,
And then stage 5 is where lasting transformation happens. Stage 5 is the integration, education, and stabilization.
mm-hmm,
And this is a place that you get to be really kind and patient with yourself.
mm,
Because if what you cleared, if the energy you cleared was a big kahuna, so to
mm,
speak, a big character in the movie of your life,
mm-hmm,
then you're going to have to give it some time to replace with a new main character in that movie.
mm-hmm,
There's a lot of lines, there's a lot of script, there's a lot of practice, there's a lot of places in your life where you acted in that old way. Now right, let's say as a people pleaser, now you want to act as someone that has boundaries and knows how to honor yourself and take care of yourself and put yourself first. There's a lot of places in your life. And so that means there's going to be a lot of places where you may fuck it up, fall off the horse. It's not a matter of whether you will. It's
mm-hmm,
about how quickly can you recognize it and get back in alignment.
mm-hmm,
My mentor, he's the one that told me you're looking at 18 months to fully integrate the
mm,
big areas of it. There's little other things that you could integrate in a few days, but the big identity shifts, you're looking at about 18 months till it's fully stabilized. And so in integration, you want to look at, well, what actions can I take? What actions as someone who has this belief? So how quickly can you have some wins by taking some small actions?
mm-hmm,
And, if you don't have context for how to be in the world as someone, for example, it is safe to be vulnerable. It's like, what the heck does that look like? That was never modeled to me. I have no idea. Well, this is where education fits in. This is where you could pick up the book on intimacy or listen to the podcast expert on that,
mm-hmm,
or, you know, uh, or look for someone in your life that are embodies that and pick their brain and copy them.
mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's
I
going to
like
help you.
a
And
hundred
then the
percent.
stabilization, yeah, just like planting a new seed. When you plant that new seed, that is just the beginning.
Mm-hmm,
You can't just leave it alone. You got to water it, check on it, give it enough sunlight, trim it, all the things
mm-hmm,
before it germinates, sprouts, starts to grow.
mm-hmm.
But even when it starts to grow, it's still unstable
The roots
until it
are
starts.
deepening and deepening and deepening
Yes.
before it starts to bloom totally.
Yeah. And then once they do, you wake up one day and you're like, I don't even remember what it was like to be that old person.
Mm,
Like, I don't remember what it's like to be someone that couldn't be by myself, that was
mm,
codependent and needed others. That is long gone.
mm,
Fucking love my alone time. Love my me time, right? So yeah, but this is the most important stage. And so for those of you that, if you look now at areas of your life that you've wanted to transform and maybe haven't shifted yet and you've been hard on yourself about it or resigned about it, you can now see what stage did you skip?
mm-hmm,
And if you are at stage 5, if you've done the deep work, but you've just been impatient with yourself or you haven't been bringing it into practice,
yeah.
the old you could default real quick. No
Yeah.
problem. It's
Got to
going to
build those
take
new neural pathways. We got to strengthen them. Those other
exactly,
ones had years and years and years to get nice and
exactly.
deep and real comfy. I like to tell
Yeah.
people and the clients that I work with, because the process that I have with them is very similar. And I feel like kind of like you, I've taken a lot of pieces from other people and then just been very like intuitively led about what feels like is going to support people. So I've kind of like like hodgepodge my own kind of like system that comes up when I work with people that is very, very similar to yours. And that in this kind of like last stage, as you put it, I like to tell people like you kind of have to build up the proof. Our brain has a whole list that reinforces telling us why old things are true. And when we shift the energy, we shift the belief, we have to give ourselves time to build the new proof list. Like
Mm-hmm.
we have to give ourselves time
Yeah.
to sort of like build trust with the new way of being. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's so important, especially if you want like your brain to be on board and really support the new way of being. Like sometimes it just takes time. You got to do that little step if it's vulnerability,
Mm-hmm.
that like little way you're vulnerable with somebody and it goes okay and you feel better, add it to the list, right? You hear a story
Yep.
of somebody else who did it, who got something you wanted, add it to the list. Like you gotta give yourself a little time so that that list can be bigger than the old list and you can finally throw it out and your brain feels a little bit more comfortable with it. And sometimes
Yep.
those things just take a little bit of time, and it doesn't mean you're not making progress. It doesn't mean that you haven't shifted and changed. But yes, that process of like letting the roots deepen and widen with this new way of being is just so important. So, so important.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Oh, I
Mm-hmm.
love it. Okay, so for my last couple questions for you on this, um, and I'm giggling already because I'm anticipating like how you and I would probably answer this, but for the benefit of everybody listening, when do you feel like somebody might, have a signal to themselves that it's either time to do some inner child healing work or that they might benefit from some inner child healing work? Like what might be a signal to them that this process or this approach could be something that would be supportive to them?
Yeah, beautiful question. Love this question. If you ask my clients, like, who's this work for? They'll say, everybody. Everybody
Hmm.
should do this. Everybody can benefit. But as far as like when people are ready to, um, you know, sadly, most people don't listen to the feather. They need to get hit with the Mack truck. So I urge you to not wait for the Mack truck, not wait to hit your ground zero, to feel so in the pain or the desperation. But um, for a lot of people, that's usually when it is, right? When they're just like, I mean, uh, yeah, for me, there were moments like that. I think there's definitely those that are more seekers. So, the opportunity. So I'll say that a lot of times it's like, oh, when shit hits the fan,
Hmm.
is when people choose to do it. When should they do it? Well, you want to ask yourself this. If you're not feeling held back or stuck by anything from your past, right? If you're not haunted by anything from your past, if you're not living in your past, are you in a comfort zone then? Are you in this like comfort bubble in your life, which is actually an illusion of comfort? It's not really that. It's that you're not asking yourself, what more do I desire? Or what do I desire? And giving yourself a chance to be like, oh, there's a new edge that I want to meet. And my nervous system is and I can't. Like, I know I want this and I
Hmm.
can't. I know I want this and I can't. So it's not always just about inner child work, it's about healing your past. It's
Hmm.
about freeing you to handle whatever life's going to give you, which is
Totally.
which is challenges. I'm 44. Life does not stop giving you challenges. Tell you that. And opportunities. Opportunities. And so when that opportunity comes, do you have the courage and the resiliency, emotional resiliency to seize it when
Hmm.
that challenge? Are you prepared? Are you prepared for the loss of a loved one? Are you prepared for, everybody wants to be in love and be in a relationship. Actually, everybody wants to fall in love and meet their person. No, not many people actually think about the growth the absolute biggest self-development is being in a relationship with,
Amen.
and not just with any person, but with your person,
Hmm.
because it's that safe to move through some stuff. Are you
Hmm.
prepared for that? So, you know, it's like if you're single and you want to meet that person, uh, and you're just like, oh, I'm just gonna go, you think the solution is going on dating apps, or the solution is let me hire the relationship coach. Now, if the relationship coach is certified by me, then you're good to go because you're gonna get more than just tips and tricks.
Hmm.
You're gonna get the preparation to not only meet that person, but to be able to hold that
Hmm.
relationship
Yeah.
in its
Have the space
darkest,
for it. Yeah.
have the space for it, have the space for that person, be able to show up as yourself and not um, project on them your past pain, your past fears with mommy, daddy, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So I really see it as a gift to give to yourself.
Mm,
Inner
that's
child work
beautiful.
is a gift to be like, I'm ready to get to know that little one and free her from everything that wasn't her and
Mm.
equip her to know that I'm never leaving her. She's so safe. So whatever her dreams are, let's fucking go.
I love that. Yeah, I think that one of the things I heard recently was that when you don't own your triggers, they own you. And
Yeah.
in that concept of freedom, like if you really want to own your experience, right? You want to have this space to consider and make decisions and not feel some of that like knee-jerk reaction, that compulsion, that like angst, right? Which are all signals that we're living in like our nervous system state being dysregulated for one thing, but also like living in the shadow of all of these patterns and conditioning. Those are all signals of that. If you want that freedom, that autonomy, that space to like really own and just act however you want from your heart center and not feel the what we can describe as like the restriction of all of that. Sometimes inner child
Yeah.
healing 100% is the way to with compassion and with kindness like release some of those restrictions and to like
Yeah.
widen the scope of which not only we can move and make decisions, but that we can receive life. Like it takes like a
Yeah.
wider nervous system capacity to receive different kinds of relationships, to receive more money, to
Mm-hmm.
own more things. Like those require that kind of capacity, that inner child healing can totally
Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah.
show you how to hold. And the other thing too, kind of bringing it back to what we talked about at the beginning, is to just like intellectually understand how, childhood affects your life, or sort of like intellectually be able to say, oh yeah, this and that happened in my childhood, is so different from like really moving through and feeling and connecting the dots on things and like interjecting that love and compassion back into it. You know, I feel like
Yeah.
again, that catharsis and the way that these things truly dissolve, like truly it feels like this dissolving of it and this expansion of love, like the possibility for you to feel more loving yourself about everything is what for me and what I've seen with my clients waits on the other side of doing this work.
Yeah, I mean it's really about the nervous system. If you grew up in a household that was uh chaotic, then your nervous system is programmed for chaos.
Hmm.
That's familiar to it.
Hmm.
Where if you are now in this like loving, peaceful relationship, you're going to be hyper vigilant. You're going to be waiting for the shoe to drop, and you will likely sabotage it by creating chaos because the
Hmm.
nervous system is just looking for what's familiar.
Hmm.
And so inner child work isn't just about, yeah, understanding what happened in our childhood. It's rewiring the nervous system for the parts where you created a survival strategy. So to now know that like, oh, I could be safe here. And also to introduce you to the emotions and things that you didn't experience.
Hmm.
So that you can welcome, just like you said, you could welcome and receive more of that goodness. There's so many
Mhm.
clients of mine that are just, it's like love and peace. They can't, love and joy they can't be with. They
Yeah.
could be with anxiety. They're like, oh, I'm with anxiety and anger all the time. No problem. Give me love and peace. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So it's like, but yet you want that love and peace.
Yeah.
So retraining it to receive all that goodness. And like you said, live from a heart center.
Oh, I love that so much. Thank you again for sharing all of this. One of my other questions was going to be where to start, but I feel like the nature of the process that you cultivated gives people that starting point, and it kind of gives them
Yes.
that sort of like bird's eye view of what it could look like and what some of those different checkpoints are so that they can reflect back on themselves about which parts of that, they stay in a little longer, or they skip, or that they have a hard time with. And of course, I think both Anat and I would both very much recommend this. Of course, this work is something you can do with yourself. Of course, you have the ability to lead yourself through things, but it also is very natural that you might need support and then you might need help learning how to do something for the first time. And I feel like with really deep healing work like this, it can be so supportive and healing to have somebody that can reflect back to you energy that you're really learning to embody with yourself. So I highly recommend, if you're in this work and trying to go deeper or trying to start it, really considering working with somebody who feels aligned with you and aligned with your goals and how you want to experience that, because it can take it from one experience and totally like supercharging it to another. Yeah, there's really nothing quite like having somebody that can really walk you through that process. All of
Yeah. And,
that to
and if
say,
you're a coach or healer yourself and you're just like, I want to be able to take my clients deeper, to know that no matter who's in front of me, I can uh, guide them to their freedom. Then, let's talk. Let's get
yeah,
you
that's
trained up.
that was going to be my question to end us, was tell us how people can connect with you, tell us how they can work with you, for
Hmm.
anybody that's just been enamored and feels really drawn
Yeah.
to you in that way. Tell them how they can do all the things, and I'll make sure that all of the information about this is in the show notes as well, but please share with us.
Yeah. So I hang out on Instagram. If you follow me there, you'll definitely get a direct message from me within a week, if not sooner, because I like to know about my followers, bring out the human behind the name. And yeah, we could chat in there and, I'll point you in the right direction, whether it's me or someone else. And then my website, trainingcampforthesoul.com. And although a lot of what I talk about is catered towards coaches and healers, I was a coach and healer before I was a mentor. So my programs are still also available for anybody who's not a practitioner themselves that just wants to experience that deep healing and freedom.
I love that. Well, thank you again so much for coming on this episode, helping us have some breakthroughs about inner child work and what that can really mean for us. Thank you to everybody who listened, and we will see you next week on Breakthroughs with Brie.